my house. This is my actual workbench in my actual home, so welcome, come on in, glad to have you. I'm going to put co-witness iron sights on my carry gun Glock 48 today, but because I need the sight pusher tool to be able to push the rear sight out, that means this Judge green dot has got to go. So I thought I'd do a video showing you complete install of co-witness iron sights and a green dot on a Glock 48 from start to finish. First thing I need to do is show you that this gun is in fact unloaded and ready to start working on it, and then I need to get rid of this green dot so we can start with a plain slide. So with a little bit of help from video editing magic, here we go. Alright, thanks to some video editing, we have the plate that covers up the back of the slide, and we still have our factory iron sights, which we're going to get rid of. They're actually not iron at all. These are plastic sights, and I like to call them slot fillers. My theory on the slot filler sights is that it's a lot like the old Z28 Camaros in the late 60s, how Chevy would put a 427 big block giant torquey V8 in those old muscle cars, and then they'd put a little single exhaust on it because they knew that the end user was going to cut that exhaust off. They were going to put on full length headers and cherry bombs and go do Camaro things on their own, and they didn't want the customer to have to pay for an exhaust, a nice exhaust that they were going to throw away and customize anyway. And I think Glock's the same thing. They have these cheap plastic sights on here, which are just to fill up the slots, and it's so you have the ability as the end user to purchase some good sights that are your favorite configuration, the height that you need, the tritium insert configuration that you want, or the color front sight that you want, or the fiber optic that you want. It gives you the ability to not have to pay for all of that baked into the cost of the Glock when you buy it, and then you can customize it easily. But Glock knows these are cheap, crappy sights. Everybody else knows they're cheap, crappy sights, and what you're supposed to do is get rid of the plastic and put on some metal, and that is what we're going to do. So let's get to it. Again, gun's unloaded, so let's go ahead and take the slide off of the frame, point it in a safe direction. I don't care that I just verified that it's unloaded. We follow all the safety rules at all times. I'm pointing it in a safe direction, and I'm going to depress my trigger. I like to put my thumb through the trigger guard, pull the gun slightly out of battery, like that, push down on the lever, and off comes the slide. We're going to discard this. We don't need it for the rest of this video, and we're going to work with the slide itself. Let's go ahead and pull the recoil spring and the barrel while we're at it. Now, the rest of the video, we will be working with the slide only. Okay, so I've got my slide in my vise.
And now, Your Highness, we will discuss the position of the hidden rebel base.
Okay, no, that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. Horrible idea. Alright, let's pull this off. Get rid of the soft jaws. Here's what we need. It used to be that only actual gunsmiths that did sights for a living could afford the $300+ sight pusher tool. That is not the case anymore. Alright, see this? Get out of my light real quick. That is a real sight pusher tool that is currently $58.99 on Amazon, okay? It's listed under ATG Heavy Duty Rear Sight Tool. Ordinary price is $69.99. Right now it's on sale as I make this video for $58.99. If you're going to do sights at all, it's completely worth it. I'm going to show you how easy this is, okay? Alright, so our slide has got this piece in the front of it that is currently not in focus, sorry, but this is the piece that holds the recoil spring in place. Alright, so that's pretty tall, so we're going to slide it like this, alright, from the back. So we're just going to line up the rear sight here. We spin this dial at the bottom to bring the slide up a little bit, like that. Tighten it in from this side, tighten it in from that side, and tighten it in from the top. So we're holding on to our square Glock slide very easily from all directions, top, left, right, bottom, and then we just turn this. And we don't have to get a hammer and a punch and beat on things. Boom. Alright? Boop. There that goes. Take the front, right side. There we go. And the rear sight has been removed. See how easy and painless that was, and we didn't scratch anything? Alright, that's worth the money to get a real sight pusher tool. And here's the part where the user manual says installation is the reverse of disassembly. So I'm basically going to take my rear sight, I'm going to line it up in that dovetail. There we go. I'm going to start it over, moving the opposite direction. Now I'm going to push in from left to right, sliding it through that dovetail. Notice I'm not really having to use a ton of force here, alright? Because the sight pusher tool does all the work for me. It is doing the mechanical advantage of the leverage of the thing, not me. Now what I need to do is be careful about it, and I'm going to try to eyeball it to where this is in the dead center, the very, very middle of the slide. Fortunately, the Glock slide is pretty symmetrical. It's basically a box, and I just need to eyeball it at the top of the box. I'm not going to use any kind of fancy laser leveling system or anything like that, okay? I use my Mark 1 eyeball. And I look and I see, I'm looking at the top to see if the gap on the left and the right looks pretty much the same, which it does. I'm going to check really carefully and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my slide in my vise now, and I've switched to my macro lens, which is super cool. I can show you things up close and in focus. Here's what I'm looking for. I've got some visual cues here, and I want the rear sight to be absolutely centered as much as it can be with those visual cues. On a Glock, it's a little bit easy because it's basically a box with a rounded edge. So here's where the flat end of the box starts, and there it goes flat across, right? So that's an easy visual cue. But basically on any dovetailed slide, it doesn't matter what gun it is. If you've got a dovetailed slide, you'll have a dovetail on this end and a dovetail on this end, and you're trying to get an equal amount of dovetail showing on each side of the sight. Doesn't matter how wide the sight is, doesn't matter what the slide is. I basically want this much dovetail on this side and an equal amount of dovetail showing on that side. This particular rear sight has got a set screw in it as part of the design. I think that is wise because dovetails are not always cut correctly, and there can be a little bit of loosey-goosiness. That's a technical term. You can see that this manufacturer, Fision, has put some blue Loctite on there for us already. That's very considerate of them. Blue thread locker is your friend. Alright, so I'm going to thread this back into place and not drop it and spend a half hour looking for the stupid little set screw. There we go. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. That little thing falls and it hits the floor and it goes doink, and it will never be seen again until the Roomba finds it, right? Alright, we're going to tighten this down. We are not going to over torque it. This is a very, very fine, finely threaded and extremely small, tiny little set screw. And so we are not going to put crazy monkey strength on it. Alright, I'm not going to attach it to a torque wrench. I'm going to turn it until it doesn't want to turn anymore. Until this wrench starts to bend a little bit in my hands. Let's see if I can actually show you. No. It's not even bending. That's as far as I want to go. Okay? Blue thread locker was already on there. I'm calling the rear sight done. Before I go on, let me show you something real quick. So that's the bottom of the slide in the vise. I've got these soft plastic jaws here so I don't scratch my slide up. You know, a lot of people online say, well, iron sights never fail. You know, you should have co-witness iron sights because iron sights never fail. Well, I definitely believe in co-witness iron sights on a work gun, a duty gun, a concealed carry gun. If I can get iron sights that co-witness, I will. And yes, there is a kernel of truth that there is more that can potentially go wrong with an optical sight than with metal sights. There are more failure points, that's true. But I want to give you something to think about real quick. So, see this tiny little screw? That's one of the two screws that's going to hold our Gideon Judge onto the slide. It's not very big. And yes, those screws, sometimes I've seen screws break. We've all heard stories or even seen a dot fly off the back of the slide. because the screws broke, that sort of thing. But let me show you the size of the screw that holds the front sight on. That's the screw that holds the front sight into place. Now, it's not holding as much mass as the screw that holds the optic into place, so it's not an apples to apples comparison. But the truth is, that tiny screw is the only thing that gives you a front sight on a Glock. So you better put some blue Loctite on there, and you better torque it down, and you better make sure it stays in place. Just something to think about. Alright, I've reoriented the slide for reasons which will become obvious in a second. Here's my front sight. There's the hole in the front sight where my screw's going to go. I'm just going to put some blue thread locker in this hole. You can either put it in the hole, you can put it in the screw, it doesn't matter, in my opinion. I'm just going to put it like that. Alright, just a dab of it. And then I'm going to place the front sight in the top of the slide, thusly. Now, here's the hard part. Can I do this on camera without screwing it up? I'm going to put that tiny little screw inside my Glock front sight tool, and we're going to come up from the bottom so that gravity helps us keep everything in place. I'm doing this blind. Oh, there we go. And we go righty-tighty. That's a technical term. Righty-tighty, not lefty-loosey. Until it's tight. Okay, so there's my rear sight, and there's my front sight. And the front sight is installed correctly, so it is oriented nicely. It's not turned left or right. Let me see if I can give you an idea of what our sight picture looks like. Here's our hard front sight focus. That's what we're going to be looking for. We've got a green insert and a tritium insert there on the front sight, and then we've got some tritium inserts without any green on the rear sight. These are night Fision iron sights. Night Fision does not know I'm making this video. I did not ask for a deal on these sights because they are good people. They are worth supporting. They are worth my money, and frankly I think these sights are worth the money just as they are. So let me go get my invoice and I'll let you know what I paid for them. Okay, here they are. Part number GLK 005290 313 OGZG, $119 and worth every penny in my opinion. Alright, iron sights are installed. We've got the slide back in the vise. You don't really need to have the slide in the vise. You can do it in your lap or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You can do it on a desk. But for purposes of making a video, it's easier for me if I just have the slide not working, so I have both hands free and the slide's not going to move around anywhere. Okay, so our top cover is off. Retain that top plate. I wouldn't throw it away. It's worth the money. The replacement for it's expensive. Maybe someday you decide to get a different gun and sell this one, right? Okay, let's take a look at the footprint real quick. I want to talk about the Optic's footprint on the MOS Glocks. Okay, so this is the Optic footprint on the slimline Glock 43X, and in this case the 48. It's the same thing. This is what I call the shield footprint, or the RMS or RMSC footprint. It is pretty much the only footprint that you're going to see on slimline thin slides. So you'll see this on Hellcat, Hellcat Pro, SIG P365 XL, and some of the other 365s that are optics ready. You see this on the Canic. Most of the Canic guns, even the full-size ones, will have this footprint. It's a very popular footprint. What you see is we've got two M4 threaded holes here, which held on that top plate. Now they're going to hold on the Optic. And we've got 4 recoil posts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, you might have heard of the Holosun K footprint. It's the exact same thing, except that Holosun, in their infinite wisdom, did not want to put 2 extra holes in the back of their sights. So if you buy a Holosun K, series, 407K, 507K, and you want to put it on this gun, you need to shave down these recoil posts in the back. I don't know why they did that, but that's the Holosun K footprint. It's the exact same thing all around, except this is gone, that is gone, and they won't interface properly with the back of a Holosun sight. You'll need to shave them down, have a gunsmith do it in a mill, or just take a hand file or whatever it takes and get rid of those. Now, we didn't do that. We have, here is the underside of our Gideon Judge. You can see there are 4 holes there. The 4 holes correspond very nicely with the 4 recoil lugs, and the cut of the body of the optic corresponds very nicely with the cut. Alright, and it's just going to go on like that, and it's not going to move. Right? So the reason why this matters is because we want the recoil forces of the slide going back and forth when you shoot. We want those recoil forces to be taken up by these recoil lugs and by the cut of the optic footprint, if at all possible, because we don't want the recoil forces going through these tiny little M4 screws. That's what causes those screws to shear off and break, and the thing flies off and hits you in the face. You need these little recoil lugs. They're very important. You need fitment to be correct on this footprint. If you don't have that, it's not going to go well for you. Something's wrong. Call a manufacturer. Call the manufacturer of the optic. Call a manufacturer of the gun. Say, hey, part A is not fitting correctly on a part B. What do I do here? Right? But this fitment here needs to be snug without any screws at all. It needs to be very snug and not wiggly, or else you are going to have problems down the road. Okay, so here's my actual Judge pistol dot. Alright, and my CR2032 battery goes underneath it. You can see a bunch of blue Loctite in there from the last time I had this thing installed. So I'm going to take my CR2032 and I'm going to put it in so that the plus sign is facing towards me. You can see in this case I used an Energizer. This is a work gun. This is a concealed carry gun. I'm actually carrying this to defend my life, so I want a name brand battery in there. Battery companies are kind of like political parties. I don't really trust any of them, but I trust some of them more than others. And you can see that even without having it attached to the gun, it's already turned on, so I know the power works. It is not actually that big. That is a focusing thing from the camera. Watch this. There we go. Today in photography tricks. So isn't that crazy? That dot is focused at infinity. This is a macro lens that is clearly not focused at infinity. That's why the dot appeared to be the size of the entire window. But the unit is on. I've made sure that the unit is on. Now comes the time to grab my gasket, which comes in the box, and I'm going to fit my gasket over the footprint. Don't forget this part. This matters a lot. See this little guy here? He's going to go over the footprint. There's the 2 screw holes. There's my 4 recoil posts. Alright, with that in position, I'm going to put the dot on top there. Alright, the gasket is for waterproofing. It crushes a little bit. It crushes just a little bit, and it makes sure that no water can intrude and get underneath where that battery is. Now I'm going to pull out these 2 screws, and I'm going to show you our 2 M4 screws, which I have actually made a video about. I'm going to link to that video in my description. Okay, so here are my 2 screws. The shiny one is going to be on the left side of the optic, and the black one is going to be on the right side of the optic. The shiny one is shiny because I had to remove some goopy, dried blue Loctite off of it. So I kind of scratched it up a little bit while I was using some sandpaper to remove that blue Loctite. It's okay, we can use these again. They're not like small block Chevy cylinder head bolts where you can only use them once. The right side is slightly shorter than the left. Let's see if I can get you to see that. There's the top of it. There we go, like this. This one here on the left side is about 8.5 millimeters of effective thread length. So if I measure the threads themselves, not that V-shaped head, but just the threads, it's 8.5 millimeters from there to there. The one on the right I've trimmed down. It is about 6.5 millimeters from there to there. I need to take about 2 millimeters off. The 2 millimeters off is so it doesn't hit the plunger that's in that channel on the right side of the Glock. The plunger hits, is pushed by a spring, and it pushes against the extractor. If this bears down against that plunger, the extractor will not work. Your Glock will turn into a malfunction trainer. No bueno. Again, there's a video in the description that you can watch all about that. So this one's going on the right hand side, this one's going on the left hand side. These are both M4 thread pitch, and we will be using a T10 bit. I tend to buy these in bulk because of my job. I get these off of Amazon as well, and I buy them 10 at a time. So if I wreck one, I just grab another one, no big deal. There is a tool that comes in the box that will let you install this Optic without having to have your own bit, but it won't work in a torque wrench, which we're going to do next. Okay, so here we go. Time to do this for real. I'm going to put some blue thread locker in my 2 M4 holes. Not a ton of it. Remember that this hole on the right goes all the way through. There's a plunger underneath there. There's a spring underneath there. If I absolutely goop it up with blue Loctite, I am not doing the Glock any favors as far as reliability goes. Alright, so I'm just going to do a little bit there like that. A little bit there like that. Kind of covers it up for a second. But my screw is going to go through there and they're going to soak up that blue Loctite. Here is my gasket. Gasket goes in place like that. Here is my Optic. Goes in place like that. I should feel it very firmly in place, not wiggly jiggly. I put the left hand screw on my T10. Whoop, there we go. And I'm just going to make this snug. I'm not going to torque it down yet. Snug like that. Here's the right one. Snug like that. And I'm just turning these until they don't want to turn anymore. And I'm not getting crazy tight with them yet. Done. Now it's time to get out the torque wrench. I use a Wheeler fat wrench. I'm just going to show you what I use. Right, there are different ones. I like Wheeler quite a lot. You can see I put my bit in the end of it. That's my T10. This is the electronic Wheeler. It's not that expensive. I'll put a link in there. That's showing that right now there's 0 inch-pounds of torque on it. And if I hit this, you'll see that I've got it set to 15 inch-pounds. Alright, that's where I want it to be. And this is an audible torque wrench, so I don't need to necessarily look at this display on the back. So we're not going to. We're going to quietly listen and see if we can hear when I'm getting close to 15 inch-pounds of torque. Alright, that was 10 I was watching. I'm going to make this one about 10. There we go. You hear that? That was 13. It's letting me know that I'm approaching the torque limit that I set on the torque wrench. That one made it to 14. Let's go back to the left side. Alright, you hear the solid beep? Solid beep means that I have reached my torque limit and it's time to stop turning. There we go. 15 inch-pounds on each side. Remember, inch-pounds are not the same thing as foot-pounds. So, if I see one of you guys on the internet trying to use one of these, that's not going to work. Alright, inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. There is our night vision rear sight looking over the top of what I call the deck height of the Optic. The back part of the Optic that gets in the way of iron sights, that's what we call the deck height. So I've got a good sight picture here for co-witness. It's not taking up too much of my window. There's my rear sight. And there's my front sight. I can see both of them. And I'm going to give you a demonstration of the motion sensing auto illumination. So I've got a pen here, and I'm just going to tap it with a pen, and there we go. So rear sight, front sight, and there's that 3 MOA dot. That's only going to cover up 3 inches of target at 100 yards. Look how much more fine a front sight, a sight picture that is, compared to the thickness of that front sight. One thing I want to bring up real quick, I've been using this pen today, so let's give a shout out to VLAP. VLAP is the Veteran Legal Assistance Program. Very cool people. myVLAP.com. If you are a veteran and you need some legal help, go to that website. They can help you out. They're really good people, and they're trying to help out our veterans who are not being very well taken care of these days. Alright, VLAP, you guys are awesome. You are the sponsor of today's video. There you go. Congratulations. Guys, that is it for my install. Now the question is, since I had to remove and reinstall this Optic, it's a lot like removing and reinstalling to change batteries, right? So everybody knows now I have to re-zero. How much will my zero be off after removing this Optic and then replacing it during this video? I don't know. I'm going to go to the range and I will post in the comments and let you know what I found out. Alright, that's pretty much it for today's video. Time to put the Glock back together. Might as well put a little bit of lubricant on it while I've got it apart. So if I was installing that dot for the very first time, I would slave the dot to the iron sights to start with. Because that's going to at least get you on paper at a reasonable distance, right? The dot and the iron sights should be treated as separate sighting systems, which they are. So when we're shooting with the dot, we're target focused shooting. We're looking right at the target. We're not looking at the dot. And that's different than shooting with iron sights, unless we have taught ourselves to be target focused with irons, which I'm working on. It's a little bit challenging. But target focus with irons can work. But at the end of the day, they're two different sighting systems. They should be treated as such. I'm going to check and make sure that my iron sights hit by turning the dot off and shooting with irons to check my point of aim and point of impact there. And then I'm going to turn the dot on and I'm going to focus on the target. And I'm going to do target focus shooting with the dot like normal and make sure that the dot is hitting where I want to hit. In terms of sighting in, this isn't going to be a sighting in video. It's already long enough. I like to start at about 10 yards. Try to refine my group at, say, 20 yards. And if I can get a good zero at 20 yards, that's probably going to be good enough for me. But you need to basically go as far as you can to where you can shoot a group that's small enough that you can make a decision about where to adjust. These windage and elevation adjustments in all of the Gideon optics have clicks. They are 1 MOA per click, roughly. It's not a target turret, but it's roughly 1 minute of angle or 1 inch at 100 yards per click. And then there's a tool, a little screwdriver that is included in the box that I would recommend to use to actually make those clicks. When you're doing the adjustments, this says counterclockwise is up and counterclockwise is right. That's point of impact. Don't worry about where the dot's going inside the window. Don't overthink it. If I'm shooting low and I want to bring the dot up, I need to go counterclockwise, click, click, click. If I'm shooting left and I want my bullets to go to the right, then I go counterclockwise, click, 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 okay? That is how it works. I've got this thing oiled up a little bit, and it's going to be time to hit the range soon. See you guys in the next video.